Hi, welcome to Tech Tuesday. I am so glad that you're here today. My name is Abby Ritchie, and I am the founder of Senior Savvy, which relieves tech stress for older adults so they can excel in today's world. But you will find me here on LinkedIn Live's Foresight TV every Tuesday. I'm talking to tech innovators involved in senior living, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. Now, before I introduce my guests, I want to remind you that the Evolve 2022 conference begins on April 5th. It's right around the corner. And we want you to be part of the discussion on how to increase resources and support for life enrichment teams. This conference is made possible by our sponsors, which include It's Never Too Late, Care Center Stage, Sirona TV, Quilt, Total Brain Health, Pocketbook Memory, and Photavia. So for more information, head to the seniorlivingforesight.net website. And before I introduce my guests, I'm going to run our My special guest today is the Senior Vice President of Technology and Business Strategy. He's also the Executive Director at the Center for Aging Services Technologies at LeadingAge. He is a noted researcher and authority on aging services technology. Nick Knight has said of my guest that senior living was once considered more high-touch than high-tech, and no person has done more to change that than Majd Alwan. With his influence, telehealth, wearables, wireless network, internet connectivity, and more are now considered a regular part of senior living. And I want to go ahead and introduce my special guest, Majd Alwan. Welcome to Tech Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abby. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be with you here today.
Thank you. Thanks. You know, I don't know if you know this, Majd, but a couple of years ago, I reached out to you and you were so kind to me. I had to go through several layers of introduction and several layers just to get a meeting with you, but you were so kind to me and you gave me some great advice and some guidance. So I want to thank you for that. And I imagine that you do that for a lot of people because you have a lot of influence.
I do, and again, I think it gives me great pleasure to help people. I'm just a natural helper, you might say.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's inherent in what we do, especially within senior living, right?
Absolutely.
And I want to know from you, I know you've done many, many influential things. How did you get involved in technology?
Well, I was a curious child and I was interested in learning how things work, especially technological things. And I came across a book series called How It Works. I don't know if you remember that book series from Lady Bird in English. Mm-hmm. And I started reading about microphones, telephones, televisions, and so on and so forth. And then I am the youngest of a large family. I have 4 older brothers and 5 older sisters. My brothers and my dad were sort of engineers. Right. One of my older brothers is a mechanical engineer and another one is a computer engineer. So I've seen him work on electronics and I got really into it and started tinkering and fixing and decided to become an electronics engineer.
Wonderful. You know, you just brought back some really good memories for me. So my father-in-law, he was also an engineer for Dow Chemical, and he was always getting my kiddos out into the garage to work on his workbench. And they would say, let's go outside and tinker a bit,
Yes,
and so, and that's where passions are born, right?
absolutely.
Hmm. Speaking of passions, what do you love working on?
I really enjoy mentoring people, helping people, advising people. That's my new passion. My passion before that was actually designing things and working on designing things. But of course, as an engineer, technology moves and so quickly that your sort of hands-on skills become a little less relevant, right, in terms of how technology progresses, but you still keep the vision, the process, the understanding, and be able to guide, mentor, and advise others.
I like how you mentioned that the technology changes so much, it's really hard to stay up on it, right? A lot of my clients, they feel ashamed that they're not tech savvy or that they haven't stayed up to speed. And you know what? I always just kick that to the curb and say, so much has changed. Even if, you had an IT degree, or even if you were, everything has changed. And so I want you not to feel bad about this. You're here today to learn, right?
Absolutely.
And just having that passion and the desire to learn and engage is huge, especially when we're working with older adults.
Absolutely. And again, what remains are the same principles, right? So for example, take AI is now taking off, but it started back in the 50s. So while there are new sort of algorithms and methodologies for AI in practice, while I cannot work on developing an AI software or solution, I know how it's working in the back, and because again the principles are set already.
And speaking of AI, where do you see that heading in terms of senior living communities?
Well, we're starting to see actually over the past couple of years, we've seen significant sort of applications of AI, starting from the voice controlled assistants, providing seniors with access to through these voice interfaces to menus, to activity calendars, and so on and so forth. We've seen applications where they're engaging people in conversations, in story times, and social connectedness and engagement. For example, all the way to over the last year, where we started to see robotics applications. I'm a roboticist by training. My PhD is in mobile robots, and I've seen so many examples of organizations be piloting and testing and exploring robotic AI and other AI applications, but I've never seen physical robots being pursued operationally until the last year. Again, of course, to address the number one pain point for providers today, which is the shortage of qualified caregivers.
Yes, and that is exactly what I'll be talking about on Friday when I fill in for Steve Moran on Foresight TV, that caregiver shortage. And so when you look at robotics in terms of filling that gap, where do you see the robot being able to provide the most amount of relief for senior living community?
I see in terms of robotics could be broad, right? So there could be soft robotics, for example, the chatbots that appear on websites. These are soft robotics applications. Robotic process automation has a significant role in terms of reducing the back office type of workloads on back office staff, and potentially reducing the demand for back office people, and maybe the organization would be able to use those resources to attract and pay more, for example, for the hands-on staff. So that's one type of application. The other type of application is physical robots, and with physical robots, there are two categories that I usually look at. One is service robotics, right? So deploying robotic servers or bussers in dining rooms. That's one application. Using robots for deliveries, automated deliveries. That's another. Using robots for disinfecting and floor cleaning. That's a third. These are all good use cases that can sort of do not necessarily replace people, but give the people who are there more quality time interacting and engaging with the dining room sort of clients, the residents, and so on and so forth.
I want to backtrack to something you said about the chatbot, for instance. So knowing what you know about programming and about the extent and the abilities of these bots, do you have certain questions that you like to ask them to get to your answer faster?
Well, it depends on how it's programmed. So the short answer is no. It depends, but sometimes I see them not to be the optimized, right? And sometimes asking you questions that are a waste of time for at least, again, for a savvy user, right? But again, we've come a long way from the early days of AI. So the second category of physical robots that I did not mention yet is assistive robots, right? Assistive robotics. So this could be anything from an autonomous wheelchair for handicapped people with multiple disabilities to exoskeletal suits and robotic suits that could be used as a short-term rehabilitation, maybe immediately after a stroke, all the way to a permanent sort of assistive device for people who lost the ability to walk and use their limbs.
Yeah, those are all really great uses. You know, when I'm teaching my classes to seniors, I try to encourage them as much as possible to lean in to AI now while they have dexterity in their fingers, while their eyesight works. Lean into it now, because those skills are going to support them for years to come, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes people just hate the new, but they don't realize how it's going to support them later on.
Yeah, and how quickly it's going to creep on them, whether they like it or not. Right? If you don't get what you want what you have.
Yeah, gotcha. So I want to ask you something. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing with technology within senior living communities as it relates to residents, as it relates to staff, and as it relates to the administration?
We've been seeing that older adults are coming into communities with a number of personal devices. They're demanding broadband. So two things really. Number one, the exponential increase in demand on bandwidth that many aging service providers are not quite on top of. So the internet users, their demand on bandwidth is increasing by over 50%, especially the high-end users. And I definitely classify life plan community residents as high-end users because they have the time, the luxury of time, and especially those that are tech savvy, they're using their broadband for streaming and so on and so forth. So that's number one challenge for organizations. And the other thing is when you make technology available and broadband available as an amenity, and you have resident-facing applications, you are bound to need to provide more technical support as well as training, right? And that's why last year we have developed a guide for aging service providers, looking at different models that successful organizations that have deployed resident-facing technologies also bundled and offered different types of education training as well as technical support for those residents.
You know, when you mentioned that number one challenge, I will tell you firsthand, I saw that the lack of broadband, the lack of planning, the lack of infrastructure, just exponentially over the past 2 years, right? It became
absolutely. We've seen a step increase in demand on bandwidth because all of a sudden, everybody is using video conferencing like what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yes. And, you know, I was in several senior living communities at the time, and they were just saying, we just don't have it. We just don't have it together to do that. So they were doing everything on paper, right?
Yep.
And still the technology and getting the infrastructure in place in order to provide that type of broadband connection is still something that a lot of them are working on today.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that they not only prepare their infrastructure for the demand today, but understand the increase in demand on bandwidth, measure it year over year, and future-proof that infrastructure so that it doesn't have a bottleneck as soon as the project is done. As soon as they're done with updating their infrastructure, they find that if they need to use, for example, a telemedicine card that has ultra HD cameras, it's choking and not providing the appropriate resolution on the images, for example.
And you know what? I don't even think that the IT companies, the infrastructure, the cable, the fiber, I don't even think that they're able to accurately predict the demand. Because it seems like we are constantly asking for more than what is available.
Right. Yeah. Again, you need to estimate the demand, and these companies use stochastic models because they rely on the fact that not everybody is going to be increasing their demands on the network or using the network at the same level of intensity at the same time, right? And again, I'm optimistic because we've advocated for broadband, especially for low-income older adults, especially those that live in affordable housing like HUD housing. And we're pleased to see that the latest bill, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, actually has a significant funding for broadband infrastructure in the country, especially the last couple of miles. So I believe that that's going to create a lot of opportunities for senior living in general and affordable housing and low-income older adults or low-income families in general, opportunities to get connected for an affordable price.
Yeah, it is astounding how much things have changed in the past couple of years. So much has accelerated, right?
Absolutely.
And it also is part of the silver lining of COVID to say that the technology adoption has really come along and has been so much more accepted in places that it wasn't before.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there was a silver lining for the COVID-19 virus, It was the how quickly people sort of pivoted and utilized technology to overcome the challenges that we were all facing.
Well, and it sounds to me that with where you're headed and with the people that you're mentoring and its various acts and laws that you're helping to pass, that you're on the cutting edge of understanding and explaining and implementing so many new concepts. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, frankly, I get my inspiration from forward-thinking providers who are out there day in and day out and facing these challenges. They give me inspiration, and they give me sort of the energy to put into some of the things that we're developing to help capture the case studies and the use cases and their achievements, and B, disseminate among the other LeadingAge members and the provider communities so that they would be inspired and replicate, and C, of course, uh, identify still the gaps and the challenges that they're facing so that we can develop tools to help them as well as the rest of the aging service provider community.
Are there certain communities that you are always looking at to see what they're doing next?
Absolutely, there are, and I don't want to. I can name a few. For example, ACT's retirement community is one of the ones that I always look at. There are quite a few. River Spring Health in New York City, Parker Health Group, which I serve on their advisory board, as well in New Jersey. Front Porch in California, so many, and again, most of those are involved and engaged with CAST, and we're lucky that they're willing to write case studies and share their experiences, and not only the benefits that they've seen from technology, but also the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak.
Yeah.
But also the challenges they faced, how they overcame those challenges, and what lessons they've learned, and what advice they have for others who are still on the fence or considering embarking on a similar journey.
Yeah, speaking of those case studies, I know early on in the pandemic, I had a couple in mind I wanted to write, and anytime I tried to get approval from the senior community, they just were like, no, 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 we're not doing that, not right now. We've got our hands full with COVID, right? And so when you're looking at all the various case studies that you're receiving, what is one that you haven't received yet that you would love to have more research on?
I would love to see case studies about physical robots, and we're in the process of actually talking to a couple of provider organizations. Cypress Living, Joe Velderman, for example, is one of those pioneers. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to speak with him, but he is on the top of my list to sort of kindly ask him to help us and contribute a written case study.
Great. Yeah. We had Joe on a couple weeks ago, and he is inspiring. And,
Absolutely.
one thing we did talk about, I'd be interested in knowing from you as well, is, out of all these ideas, and I know as an entrepreneur, I have so many ideas, and a lot of them, you got to put them out there. You got to try them. You have to see what works. And a lot of things fail, right? They
Absolutely.
just do. So I want to know from you, what was something that you surprisingly were unable to bring to fruition?
Well, I can talk from a personal experience. Before I came to LeadingAge, I developed technologies to monitor older adults' health status and functional status using sensors embedded in the environment. And we had very compelling results. And we spun off a technology company. It had the right partnerships with aging service providers, large aging service providers. But I believe that, and then I was recruited to LeadingAge, right, to lead cast at the time. And the company hired a CEO, and I was surprised that it did not take off. That company did not take off. It ended up being acquired several times. But I believe the reason now is that we were too early to market. The market was not ready. Providers were not ready. Payers, especially, were not ready. But I firmly believe that after these 2 years of COVID, we're seeing a lot better understanding from all the stakeholders, from congressional staffers, from policymakers, government officials, business people, payers, and so on and so forth. I really believe that we're starting to be at the inflection point of the hockey stick, where we will see significant adoption of a broad array of technologies into not just senior living, but society in general.
Yeah, it's reminding me of the Apple Watch. So, I started wearing this when the Series 4 came out, when it had the first fall detection software in it. And at first, I just thought, oh, I'm just going to wear it to get to know it so I can help my clients with it. But what I found was that more and more of them started wearing it in lieu of the pendant, right? Because it does not have that stigma involved with it. It's a sleek device. So, and so I think that with the fall detection, with walking steadiness, with activity and heart monitoring, there is so much wrapped up in here in those sensors, right? Like you mentioned, those particular sensors, that this is a fabulous diagnostic tool in so many ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wear one of them. It's not the Apple Watch, but I wear one of them.
All right. So which one are you wearing and why?
Well, I'm wearing, I don't want to do an advertisement, but this is this one monitors my heart rate, breathing rate, temperature, body temperature, and blood oxygen levels every 20 minutes. It's a 24/7 every 20 minutes. And it also has an ECG. If I feel that I'm out of breath, I touch this and it has a 2 electrode ECG that gives me an immediate sort of diagnosis. The app has diagnosis for ECG. So that's the one I'm wearing because I have a family history. I'm a slightly hypertensive, and I have a family history of heart problems. So I need to be careful.
Yeah, and all the data gets sent to physicians too. So
can be exactly, yes.
Good. So I'm glad you're wearing that. You're taking good care of yourself, and I wanted to ask you as we wrap up here today, what are you working on this year that you're really excited about that you want to share with the Tech Tuesday viewers?
Well, we're currently sort of putting the final touches on planning the virtual collaborative care tech summit in June 7 and 8. And the theme this year is technology connecting and strengthening the workforce. We're trying to address the number one pain point for our provider community. And we're looking at a broad array of technology solutions, ranging from robotics, physical robots, to soft robotic applications, to human human management software and technology platforms, to electronic health records, to telehealth, and how all of these can increase efficiencies. So that's one that's coming soon. We're also going to be working on a white paper on digital transformation of aging service organizations. Again, how they need to be strategically thinking about the roles of employees and how they can redefine those roles, rewrite job descriptions, and utilize technology where appropriate and to maximize efficiencies. So
Yeah.
that's the second one. And we're going to be looking at our signature sort of for the past 10 years, we've been focusing on developing hands-on tools to help providers select different categories of technologies. So this year we're focusing on infection control in general, broadly, ranging from hand hygiene all the way to staff and resident screening, all the way to disinfection and disinfecting robots, for example. Yeah. So these are the three things that are in the hoppers.
And if someone wanted to get more information and participate, where is the best place for them to go?
They can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can definitely check leadingage.org/cast, C-A-S-T. That's our website. And we have a lot of tools, and all the tools, I believe that the rising tide is going to lift all boats. So we're not for profit, and most of the tools are in the public domain and can be used by any provider, whether they're members of LeadingAge or not.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for touching so many lives and for impacting so many senior living communities, as well as focusing on mentoring people in the industry. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I was just thrilled to have you here. And so at this point, I'm going to bid you all farewell, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday.